Hi there, my name is Toby and this is Body Efficiency Training, and this is lecture 2 in my Magickal Science Lecture series, and this lecture is all about the Force. What is the Force? And I mean the Force in Star Wars, I mean Chi, the Chi energy, or Ether as in Tesla's science, and these are all really the same thing, or at least the way I'm describing it, these are all the same thing. So in the last lecture, the first lecture, I was talking about modern science and how it is very unsatisfactory in that it does not explain the life force. It doesn't acknowledge it or even talk about it. And I was pretty brutal, destroying modern science, but it was to prove a point. And the point is, if we had this better science, and this is Tesla's science, and you could say this lecture series is really a new explanation of Tesla's physics and Taoist philosophy, in such a way that even a child could understand it. I hope to make this very, very simple so that anyone can understand it. But in Tesla's physics, it's a very different idea of how the universe works. And Tesla did not agree with Einstein, and he did not agree with quantum mechanics. And that's what we base most of our modern physics on, Einstein and quantum mechanics. And this leads to all sorts of nonsense. And Tesla was very much against that. He did not like what Einstein was doing. And he'd be writing to him saying, listen, stop with this nonsense. So it's a big deal to go against Einstein and go against all modern physics. But that's what I have to do here. So apologies to any scientists out there. I'm not dismissing you entirely, of course. And interestingly enough, quantum physics is now moving towards the ether. They have to eventually accept the ether, but they won't just say it. They can't say ether, so they've got about 30 different terms in quantum mechanics, which really just means the ether. They're talking about dark energy. Well, that's the ether. They talk about quantum flux, quantum foam, quantum liquid. All these are just euphemisms for the ether. But they're not allowed to talk about the ether because it's been dismissed as nonsense. And I would go so far as to say this was actively dismissed. Pre-Second World War, all the science was about ether. They all talked about it and thought about it. And Tesla, of course, is the most famous, but it wasn't only him. All these top field theory guys would be talking about the ether. And after the Second World War, after Einstein, it was dismissed as nonsense, and we were given this other type of physics, quantum mechanics, which is still basically materialism. We're still thinking that the planet, the universe is made up of matter, this material substance, but we're not explaining what it is. We don't say what it is, we're just saying there is this thing called matter. And that's not good enough. We need to explain this from the beginning. So this lecture, I'm starting the science. I'm starting to explain this magical science. And of course, this is my own interpretation. This is my way of explaining it, what I've thought about. And I want to give you the idea that this leads to a better science. Not only does it lead to the chi, a better feeling in our body, but it leads to a better technology. And Tesla is famous now for his better technology. He had wireless power transfer. A real thing, you can do this, people have done it and they're doing it. Which basically implies if we'd followed Tesla, if all our modern physics was working on that model of the universe, Tesla's model, we would have different technology. We would live in a different world right now. Wireless power means we'd have no wires and we'd have no batteries. Nothing would need a battery. Everything would just be powered by itself. So imagine a world like that, very different, but very difficult to make money. It's all free energy. How do you charge for it? So of course we need a method that makes money. So we've got a science, all the science is guided towards profit. And a lot of the scientists, of course, they believe they're doing real science. They've got the idea of quantum mechanics and general relativity into their head, and they believe it, and they're thinking and thinking and thinking about it. But I would urge them all to stop thinking about it and start again. Start again, go back to the beginning, and that's what I want to do in this lecture series. So today we're going right back to the beginning. And the beginning, really, we've got to start, the beginning is not the Big Bang, we're not going backwards in time, the beginning is here and now. You see, there is only one moment, there's only one moment that is reality, and it's this present moment, is the only reality. The beginning of this lecture is already in the past, it doesn't exist anymore. It's gone into the dream, it's gone into fantasy, it's gone into memory, but it's not real. And the future is the same, that the end of this lecture hasn't happened yet. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to say. It hasn't happened. It's in the dream. It's not real. Only the present moment is reality. And this is intuitive knowledge. We can all, think about this and it feels right. This makes sense. Now, again, we talk about timelines, but we can't have a timeline because, again, there is no past and there is no future. They do not exist. So you can't travel to the future because it does not exist. There's nothing to travel to. It's the same with the past. The past does not exist. So you can't travel back. I'm sorry. The only reality is this present moment and what we are experiencing in this present moment. And we build up the model of the universe from here. So let's start with what we know. Let's start with what we know. And we're all sitting here, and what do we know? Well, we know that we're alive. We know we're alive because you're listening to me. You're thinking. There's some thoughts going on in your mind, going on in my mind. And what are these thoughts? Well, these thoughts are not physical. If you think about it, then they can't be physical. Your thoughts are not a physical thing. Something is going on in your mind, but you can't say where it is. Now, we know that something is also happening in the body. The brain is doing something, and we can measure the brain waves, and the brain waves might be able to translate what you're thinking to some degree, but it can never truly translate everything you're thinking. But what's happening is that the thoughts are triggering your brain waves, and the brain waves are being measured, but you're not measuring the thoughts directly. There's something else going on, and you know this because you can have incredible imagination in your mind. Very elaborate things going on, elaborate feelings. You also have feelings. And again, feelings are subjective. You're feeling something, like you might be feeling curiosity listening to me, or you might be also feeling annoyance. This guy's crazy. I don't know how long I'm going to listen to him, but you're feeling something. And that feeling is not physical. It's an experience you're having. And how do you measure that? The same business. It will have some physical effects. You can measure some hormones in your body, some change in heart rate, some increase in temperature. You can measure something going on in your body and interpret the feeling you might be having, but the actual feeling is not physical. You can't really tell me exactly the nuance of the feeling you're having. If you say that I love you, well, you can't prove that. How do you prove that? You can't quantify, this is the amount of love, here it is, this is I love you that much. You've got to take me at my word, I love you. You see, but you will also feel it. You can feel it in response. You can feel that love. Yeah, I do feel you love me. But that again is another subjective experience that is not physical. This is to do with the life force, the chi. So this is intuitive knowledge that we've all got right now. And the question is, furthermore, let's just say one more thing about this. You know that you can imagine a lot. You can have an incredible imagination in your mind going on, but that does not mean it comes into reality. So you can have things going on in your mind that do not translate into reality. So there is a difference. There is some sort of separation going on. And you also know that there are things in reality that you cannot, that are outside what goes on in your mind. So reality is independent to you. Things can happen to you that you've got no idea they're coming to you. So there's something in external reality that is outside the control of your mind. There's two things going on here. We know this. And let's look at it a bit further. Okay, let's go into science again, the science we've discovered. So we can notice that when you think something, it will have an effect on the body. So your mind can override what happens in your body. But your body can also override what happens in your mind. There's a two-way street here. So for example, if you look at the placebo effect, the placebo effect is when you believe you're taking medicine, you actually get better. And this has been proven through multiple studies. The placebo effect is real. You've not got anything, no medicine is given to you, but you get better. So nothing has changed physically to you. You have just changed your belief. You believe something different and your body follows that belief. So your mind has completely overridden your body. And I would say there's another thing called the anti-placebo effect. And nobody talks about this, but the anti-placebo is the exact opposite. The anti-placebo effect is when you believe you're getting sick, then you get sick. Nothing is making you sick, you just believe it. And you could do a very sort of nefarious experiment. We can't really do this, but imagine you captured a prisoner and you tied them up and you gave them every day these tablets, but they're just little pills, but you might make them taste sour. So it might be little vinegar pills, and you tell them this is a deadly poison. And after 2 or 3 days, this deadly poison will extinguish your life. but you're just giving them vinegar pills. But you've tied them up and they're in a situation that they really believe you are poisoning them. And I would say that in 3 days, chances are their life would extinguish all by themselves because they believe it to be happening. And there's another story where this happens. I talk about another video. But there was a guy who trapped in a freezer cart in a train. So this was a train worker. He got trapped in a freezer cart. And he couldn't get out, and he spent the night there, and in the morning he'd frozen to death. And he wrote on the wall, "I'm freezing to death, I'm trapped in here, these may be my last words." And when they opened the cart in the morning, he was dead in the freezer, and these indeed were his last words. So he had died frozen to death. But interestingly enough, that freezer was broken. There was nothing wrong with that freezer cabinet. The temperature inside had not dropped below outside temperature. He just believed he was freezing, and he froze to the end of his life. So this tells you the mind can override your body so dramatically, and it works both ways, positively and negatively. And of course the other way, the body can override the mind. Chemistry, you take in some chemistry, it will change and alter your mind, your state of mind, your perception. Most obvious one is getting drunk. Once you've drunk a bottle of wine or a few pints of beer, you get drunk. It changes your perception, it changes your mind, what's going on in your mind, your ability to think. So there's a two-way street. Something happens in your body and something happens in your mind, and either one can seem to override the other. So this is what we know right now. Something is going on. And the third thing that we can look at and that we know right now is life, living systems. Things are alive and things are not alive. Things are animated and things are inanimate. And something is going on there. You see, a living system is continually reordering itself, reorganizing itself. So we as living systems, our cells are continually regrowing. Our cells are passing away and new cells are being born. We're continually doing this, and every 7 years or so, 7 or 8 years, every cell in our body has been replaced. We have a whole new body. So there's something is making our body regenerate, regrow, reorder itself. So a living system is an organized system. Something is being organized. And once our life ends, our life extinguishes, then that order breaks down and it turns into chaos. We turn into something called entropy. So everything without this life force, we just have entropy. Things decay down into chaos or to homeostasis. Everything just sort of blends into an even substance. That's what entropy is. So when we've got life, which you can also call a negative entropy or negentropy, life is this organizational force. Something is organizing things. And then you have entropy, which is the opposite. You might call that death. I don't want to use that word too much. So you might call that being alive and being unalive, and that is entropy. So there is something going on, and we can all agree upon that right now. Every single one of us can agree upon that. And the question is, what is this organization? What is creating this organization? There is something doing that, and this is the life force. And in order to make an organization, you see, we've got a body here, a human body. It's a very complex plan. We need a design for that. We need a pattern. We need something to organize to. So if you're going to have a process of organization, we need a blueprint. We need a plan to organize this thing to. You can't just say, let me organize it. You have to have, well, what are we organizing this thing to? So the life force is an organizational force, and it has to have a blueprint. It has to have some information. So it is also an informational force. Now this takes us back again. What is information? Information itself is not physical. So we're doing a lot of science, and in science it's all about information, statistics, and we've even got informational science, computer science. But you've got to understand, information is not physical. It occurs outside of space and time. Look at a computer. A computer will hold information. It will number crunch. It will churn up information. It will think about it. It will move the information it's got around and around. But we still have to put the information into the computer. The computer cannot create this information. It can only use whatever information it's been given. And that's an aside, but that's why I am not worried about AI. Everyone is going crazy about AI. It's artificial intelligence. And the reason I'm not worried about it is AI, you can never have a singularity. You're never going to create a conscious being in a computer. You're just not going to do it. Because a computer, by definition, is only something that holds information. It will not create information. Again, a bit controversial because AI is supposedly creating things. It's not. It's creating things based on what it's got and based on an algorithm. So the AIs we've got is just big data. We've just got now very powerful computing systems, and we can crunch big, huge data. So big. So AI is really just built upon the internet. And in time, there's going to be so much AI. It's AI just feedback looping itself. So it's not getting more intelligent. It will get less intelligent. And you'll see that as well. At the moment, we're worried we'll lose jobs. Well, we may lose jobs. But in time, as AI gets bigger and bigger, you'll see it actually will get worse. This is my prediction. It will make mistakes, and we'll have to bring humans back again because we've reached the limit of the capabilities of artificial intelligence. You can only do so much. And the other thing you've got to realize is, what's the difference between real intelligence and artificial intelligence? Well, that's one difference. Real intelligence can have a spontaneous thought. We as living beings can have a genuine spontaneous thought. It comes from nowhere. Where does this idea come from? I don't know. It just came to me. A computer, you can't just say, well, where did you get that idea from? I don't know. It just came to me. Well, it might say that, but of course it's only saying what it has discovered on the internet. It's only repeating what someone else has said in its own way. So a computer cannot have a spontaneous thought. And again, computer scientists will agree with me on this. This is known. But random numbers, let's look at a random number. You ask a computer to generate a random number. It's a very difficult thing to do, to write the algorithm to generate a random number. And in fact, it can't be done. You can't generate a random number. A computer, when it generates a random number, it's a very big, complex algorithm, and it's to do with creating a very large pattern of numbers. It still needs a pattern to follow, but the pattern has got to be so big that when it uses this pattern, it might as well be random, but it's not truly random. If you ask a human being or a living thing to generate a random number, name me a number, it come off the top of your head, it will be a genuinely random number. So that's the difference. So that's why I'm not worried about AI. You can never have a singularity of consciousness in a computer. Don't worry about it. It's only going to get so far. But now also you might say human beings don't generate random numbers because we've also been programmed. We are also like computers, and we have been programmed. And part of this body efficiency training is to deprogram us, get rid of the programs we've got because they're not healthy programs. We've been given some programming that is not good for us. And we want a better programming that is good for us. So we've got to do that ourselves. We've got to work this out ourselves and reprogram ourselves. So again, if you do ask people to generate a random number, the most common number people will say is the number 37. This is research been done. For some reason, the number 37 is a very universal number, and most of us come up, well, a very large, higher statistical probability that we'll say the number 37 if we're asked for a number between 1 and 100. The number 37 is very popular, but that's a different aside. In general, a living conscious being can generate a spontaneous thought. That's what makes us alive, and a computer cannot do that. A computer can only crunch big data. It's not really intelligence, and that's why AI is also dangerous, because people are putting the data in. So people are putting the data in, and the AI supposedly is coming up with it. Well, it's not. It's just crunching the data that's been given. Anyway, the point of this is there seems to be a consciousness, there seems to be an awareness, there seems to be a living force, there seems to be information. Well, there is information, and none of these things are physical. They occur somewhere outside of this space and time, for want of a better word, that we're living in. And we're not really living in space and time, we're living in a moment. We're always living in a moment. There's only one moment. And the time is a sort of illusion. It's this moment. It's the change happening from moment to moment, is the feeling of time. But time is, again, time is not a linear thing. Nothing in the universe is linear. Time is also a cycle. It moves around and around, but it never repeats. It's always changing, rather like the seasons. You've always got the 4 seasons going round and round. Every year is the same, but of course every year is different. you know it's now spring, but this spring is different to last spring. It will never be the same, but there is a cycle of movement going on. And so but it's a sort of illusion. You can have the center of this cycle, and the center of this cycle is like a clock turning around. So the tip of the clock is experiencing time, it's moving, but the very center, the pivot of the arm going round to the very central point is not moving. So the center of the clock is outside time. And this is again, so the space outside of time is more like in the center. So again, this is a bit like the Big Bang, but it's not Big Bang in time. It's a Big Bang method of explaining how the universe builds up from outside time and expands into time. Again, we'll talk more about this in time. But here we go. So we've sort of established what we know. There is something non-physical and there is something physical. And how do these two things interact? And let's ask another question. Which one is first? Is the non-physical first or is the physical first? Well, physical is a harder one to explain because we know we're thinking, we know we're aware, we know we're alive, okay, and we're looking at matter. I'm looking at this thing, so I'm perceiving this physical object, but can I be sure of my perception? Can I be sure that this object is not just appearing like a dream in my mind? Well, the way we know it isn't is because other people confirm it, and everyone confirms it, and other things interact with this. So we can say it's outside of our mind, and things will happen to this that I can't imagine. But so what is this thing? What is this structure that allows us to interact with an independent medium? This is now like an independent medium of interaction. This is outside me, it's outside you, but we could transfer this pen between us. So this is a third party. This is something else happening that outside our mind, it's outside all our minds, but it's connecting us all together. You see, physical reality is another method of connecting us all together. We're connecting ourselves together through physical reality. All our minds are connected through this shared experience. But let's talk about it. So now what we want to do is work out, okay, so there's something that's happening. We've got a mind, we've got an experience, and we've got this external world that we're experiencing. So what is the play? How does this work? How does my mind affect this third party, this physical reality? Well, we want to start, let's go back to what is going on. Let's start with mathematics. We want to build up this whole magical science. And we're starting this from the very, very, very beginning. And I've just been setting up what we know already. And we can all agree what I've just said, that this is what we know. That we're starting from the present moment, that's what we know. And we also know this right now. Let's start with mathematics, okay? So mathematics, we all know exists. So mathematics is real, but mathematics is not physical, as I talked about in the last lecture. Mathematics is part of this conscious field, or this information. Mathematics is information, but it's information with logic. It's a logical process of information. It's like a language. And it's infallible. It's a law. This is the law. This is the real definition of the law. The only real law of the universe is mathematics. And we know this right now. Everyone who knows anything about mathematics will have to agree. Mathematics is an infallible law. And the only thing is, we don't understand fully mathematics. We've still got mathematical problems that we want to solve. But we all sort of know eventually we will solve them, because we just haven't worked our way through the mathematics enough. If we keep working through mathematics, we'll eventually solve everything, because it's a pure process of logic. There will be always a solution. So mathematics is real, it's non-physical, and it exists right now. And mathematics is the only true law of the universe. Everything else, look, what else we got in this consciousness field? We've got mathematics information. We've also got imagination. We've got imagination, but imagination is not logical, is not governed by mathematics. You can have anything in imagination. Any craziness, we can all do it right now, imagine some craziness, but we know it's never going to come into reality. And the reason it cannot come into reality, in other words, physical reality, is because in order to create a third party, see, physical reality, let's see, here's the physical reality, here's the world. This is a third party. We're all different beings living on this planet. This is a third party experience. In order to have a third party experience that applies to everyone, there needs to be some system that can abide by. And the system that this abides by is mathematics. So mathematics is the only way we can create a third party system that we can all experience together. So imagination is outside mathematics, and that means it cannot come into reality. Now, saying that, from imagination we can go to mathematics. That's what science is. We're using imagination together with mathematics to try and create something real that will work in this third-party experience. So this is what science is, the combination of imagination and mathematics to create something real. But imagination, of course, is not limited to this. So this is completely outside physical reality. This mathematics, of course, exists in both. Everything in physical reality, in the material world, will be governed by mathematics. Okay, but mathematics, again, what is the mathematics that governs everything? Let's just look a little bit further into mathematics. Now, to create something in this world is a process of growth. So we as living beings, we grow. So we're growing. And the mathematics of growth is based on this thing called the golden ratio. The golden ratio. And this is the most important aspect of mathematics. This is the thing that really governs the entire universe, the golden ratio. And let me just explain a little bit what this is. You see, we know it from the beauty in nature. We talk about the golden ratio. These things are beautiful in nature, and everything of beauty has probably got this golden ratio in it. And the reason is because this golden ratio is part of the natural law. This is the fundamental law of mathematics that governs the creation of the universe, the formation of the universe, rather. And we instinctively, as living beings, we gravitate towards that. We relate to it, and that's why we find it beautiful. But there's, of course, more to it. But let's have a little look. So the way it works is when you want to grow a flower, so you have a petal grows like this. And growth is a process of repetition. So we need to repeat something over and over in the same way. So we want to grow a flower. So we have one petal here, and then we have another petal here, and then we have another petal here, another petal there. But now, the flower keeps growing, so there's a sequence to it, and then we want another petal here, another petal here, another petal here, another petal here, and this goes on and on and on and on and on like this to grow the flower, and there'll be a certain number in the flower. But now the golden ratio, or in this case it's an angle, the golden ratio is the solution to this problem such that when these petals repeat, so this is 1, this is 2, 3, so on 4, then you'll have 5, 6. It goes, when they repeat over and over and over, there's only one mathematical solution that allows this repetition to go on infinitely. So there's always a new petal appears in the gap between the other petals. There's always a new petal appears and appears and appears and appears. And this will go on and on and on and on and on infinitely. There's always, so that when you take the angle, each one of these is a particular angle. So there will be an angle that you need here, and this is called the golden ratio angle. And again, you've got to look into this. But this angle, there's only one particular angle that can do this. So every time you repeat this angle, goes round and round. It's never in the same place. And if you go on for infinity, you will have a sphere. So this will create a circle. And there's only one possible mathematical solution that this can happen with. And it comes with a straight line. So that if you look at a straight line, you take a line A to B, here's the line, and if you want to divide the line in two, you've got to say divide it anywhere, and you want A and B. And now you want to divide this line again, all right? So if you divide this line again, and here you've got A and B, but this line, when you divide it a second time, it's got to have the same proportions, A and B. And then the same one again, you might divide it again. My point being is, when you divide the line each time, the proportion's got to be the same. There's only one solution that allows this to happen, and that solution is the golden ratio. It's 1 to 1.61 or something, something, something. Again, it's an irrational number. It's an irrational number, but this is also, this relates to the much more powerful mathematics called incommensurability. Incommensurability. This is Pythagorean mathematics. Now, I'm not going to attempt to explain this. If you want to understand this in greater detail, you've got to go to this guy, Ken Wheeler. I'll leave the links below. Very clever guy, scientist, mathematician, and he talks about all this. He's talking about Tesla science. And in fact, in general, I should say that to back up what I'm saying here, everything I'm saying in these lectures are my own thoughts, really, but I back them up. If you were to ask me what are my most influential teachers, well, in Tesla's physics, this guy, Ken Wheeler, is the best of the best. I've looked at a lot of these guys. That guy, I will always refer to him to understand what Tesla's science is about. Ken Wheeler, he's got thousands of videos. I'll leave the link below. He can explain all this in all his videos in great detail. And in terms of Taoist philosophy, because that's the two sides of what I'm explaining here, Taoist philosophy, I would say Mantak Chia. I'll leave again the links below to his YouTube channel. Mantak Chia, very famous Taoist master, many, many books he's written. So if you want to learn more about the Tao, I thoroughly recommend any of his work, all good stuff. And I've trained with him many workshops and many things, and I'm qualified in his healing as well, in his Qigong healing. I've done that training with him. So those are the two backups. Tesla's physics, go to this guy Ken Wheeler. Taoist philosophy, go and have a look at Mantak Chia. But I'm explaining this in my own way, and I'm hoping to put a very big discussion into a very simple understanding. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that mathematics is the language, the fundamental law of the universe, and in particular, it's the mathematics of the golden ratio that will govern everything that can appear in reality. Because for something to appear in reality, it needs to have this ability of self-replication forever. And there's only one possible solution for this to happen. And it's the golden ratio solution. And this goes to the grand unified field theory. Field theory, which is, again, Tesla's science, grand unified field theory. And science, they are searching for the ground unified field theory. They are searching for it. They're openly doing it. And I mentioned this in another video. But they know quantum mechanics and general relativity do not mix together. So they can never have the grand unified field theory. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to blend quantum mechanics with Einstein's relativity into one theory. And then they'll have the grand unified field theory. But they can't do it. And the reason they can't do it is because they've dismissed the ether. The ether is the grand unified field theory. And this is it here. Now, I've explained this in terms of a flower, but more importantly than this is the same as the magnetic field or the electromagnetic field, or the best word for it is the dielectric field. The dielectric field. There's two things going on. Dielectricity, that implies a polarity. But that creates a field, so the dielectric field, that is magnetism. So they're always combined. You can never have one without the other. So dielectricity creates a field by itself, and that field is magnetism. But there is a slight delay between these two fields, and because of that delay, it creates this spatial effect. But it's the same here. You see, the dielectric field repeats itself, and eventually it will become a sphere. So the magnetic field is a sphere. But the lines of interaction between dielectricity and the field it creates have this sort of effect. So if you look at a magnet, under this particular magnetic viewing strip, you'll see a pattern very much like that. So electromagnetism, or the dielectric field, is also governed by the golden ratio, which is here, phi. You can also have it capital Phi. So that is the golden ratio, but this mathematics governs the very field itself. And the field itself, the creation of this field will create space. That is, the space is the after effect of a magnetic field. So again, a slight digression, but my point being here is mathematics is the underlying language of the physical reality, of this manifest world. And there's only one particular solution of mathematics that allows the physical world to appear in such a way that we can have a shared experience in here. There needs to be laws of interaction. So if I were just allowed to have my fantasy come true, and you are just allowed to have your fantasy come true, these two fantasies will never meet. They can never mix. You can never create a reality between two fantasies. There's only one reality that allows all our fantasies to come together, and that is the physical reality we've got. The physical reality is a shared fantasy, but it's not a shared fantasy because it's governed by mathematics. It's governed by logic. So it's not a fantasy, it's a reality, but it's a shared experience. But our own individual selves, our own relative universe in our mind, which is not here, our mind is non-physical, these thoughts, that is imagination that we can all have, is independent, it's subjective, but those two fantastical imaginations don't necessarily make a reality. And we know that, we instinctively know that. And we know people that are living in a fantasy world. This guy's just living in a fantasy world. Hey, you might be thinking I'm living in a fantasy world here, but bear with me. I'm hoping that this will become clearer and clearer, and you'll see that there's a logic to it. So now let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about the ether and the life force. So we've discovered there's something non-physical. We know there's thought. Well, thought implies consciousness, because something is thinking. Well, that goes back to Descartes, I think, therefore I am. And we know there's mathematics. We know there's mathematics because there's logic. And this is mathematics, which is mathematics allows us to have something shared. And then we also know there's information. There's information as well. There's things recorded, but information not physical. None of these things are physical. But these three things, all of these things, and everything in the non-physical world, we can put together and we can call this chi, or we can call this ether. Or we can call this the force. So this is what I'm calling it. So we know that there's something there. Now let's give it a name. And it is the force because, well, consciousness together with mathematics and information can create life. Because what you need for a living thing. So mathematics itself can create a world. So now we've got a structure in which we can create a shared experience that all our fantasies can coexist in. But in order to create a living thing on that world, okay, we need consciousness and we need information. So in other words, consciousness, well, that is the thing that is alive, and information is the blueprint, the plan. We need a plan. So the plan is the body. We need some sort of a plan. So we need information and consciousness, and we still need mathematics. These all go together to create a living thing. So now we've got life on this universe. But what's now interesting is we've got two things going on here. We've got a living thing on this external physical reality, and there's an interplay between these two things. These two things are interplaying all the time. So how does the ether come into reality, come into this physical world? Well, it comes into it as electromagnetism. Okay, let's call it electromagnetism. So what is electromagnetism? So before we can talk about that, I've got to remind you that we've got to get this out of our head that the universe started. There's no start. Because mathematics is true and is always true, and because the golden ratio again is always true, there's only one solution for this physical reality, then the physical reality is always there. Okay? The world is always there. Well, I'm saying the earth here, but the universe is always there. It's never created. Maths is always there. The golden ratio is always there. Therefore, physical reality is always there. It never started. It's always there. Let's give another example. In mathematics, you have geometry. Geometry exists in mathematics. Because geometry exists in mathematics, it means, again, we've got geometry in the real world. Geometry always exists. So it's always been there. See, this is an argument between Plato and Aristotle. Plato's world of mathematics, there's perfect geometry. And Aristotle will say, well, in the real world, it's not perfect. You can't really ever have a perfect circle in the real world. But in Plato's world of perfection of mathematics, you can have a perfect circle. The mathematical formula describes a perfect circle, but in reality, it's not perfect. But now I think this changes. Now, again, thanks to this guy, Ken Wheeler, and my explanation of it as well, that you can have it. I think you do have a perfect circle. There is one singular particle in the world, which is a neutron. So this will be a tiny perfect circle based on the electromagnetic field or the dielectric field, and that will be a tiny perfect circle in physical reality, but it's a circle of the field, so that can be perfect, and it's described by this golden ratio. The field is created by this repetition going round and round and round and round and round and round and round, but it goes on forever, infinitely, to create a circle. And again, in mathematics, you have the concept of infinity. That means, again, in reality, you will also have the infinity. So again, the chances are the universe is infinite. But again, infinite because it is cyclical. There's no straight lines. The universe will be a sort of donut. Again, we'll come to this. But the field creates a donut shape, a toroid. And also inside the toroid, there is this, the hyperboloid. So there's two shapes. And again, Ken Wheeler talks a lot about this, but these two shapes combine to become a circle. So you need to understand that we can't talk about the beginning of things. These things are always there. So all we're talking about is what is the process. What is the process, how the non-physical and the physical interact. But one is not creating the other. They are both one and the same thing. You see, they're both mathematics. The physical world is mathematics. The non-physical world is mathematics. But there's only one mathematical solution. So the physical world is governed through this golden ratio. And again, Ken Wheeler explains it more, but this goes to the grand unified field theory, which I'll write it down here, is 1/5 to the power -3. This explains the interplay between the unmanifest and the manifest. This explains the grand unified field theory of the universe. It's all based on phi, the golden ratio. There's only one solution to create this material reality that we can all share. It's called incommensurability. This is Pythagorean mathematics, very old, very serious mathematics. And they realized the importance of incommensurability. And again, Ken Wheeler talks all about this, but the Pythagoreans were non-violent, very peaceful, loving people, but the only time they committed this a sort of atrocity is they drowned one of their members. They pushed him off a boat because he revealed the secrets of incommensurability. And they knew that they did not want the powers, the politicians, to have this knowledge. This was secret knowledge for the Pythagoreans. They knew it was powerful. This knowledge will allow technology, different technology. Even then they sort of knew that. And they knew that they did not want these corrupt powers having this knowledge. So when one of their members betrayed the secrets, well, they punished him by execution. And that's one of the rare few times they broke their non-violence. But you've got to get the idea. Okay, we're not creating a universe. There's not a first moment. It's always been there. Mathematics exists through all space and time, outside space and time. And therefore, if mathematics exists, then geometry exists. Therefore, space exists. But space is created from this field. It's created from the impetus of the ether. The ether has an impetus. So the ether here, there is a movement, a vibration in the ether. You've got a vibration in the ether, and this will create this electromagnetism. It's an impetus. So in other words, the consciousness has an impetus, and that impetus will create a movement. And this movement we're just calling that movement electromagnetism, because there's sort of two aspects to it. You've got this dielectricity and you've got this magnetism. And these two things work together. And I'll tell you now how they work together. You see, the impetus, the thought of doing something. Okay, now let's look at this another way. Let's look at something called inertia. So inertia is again another word for ether or chi. And in Taoist philosophy, they got the thing called the Wu Chi, something called the Wu Chi. And this is like the infinite void. There's the emptiness, the nothingness. But they call it the pregnant void. So it's a void of emptiness filled with energy, filled with potential. And this is the original meaning of the word inertia. The ancient Greek word of inertia means pure potentiality, infinite potential. If something is at rest, it's of course a position of rest, but in rest there is infinite potentiality. Anything could happen. And because this is all infinite, this has to go in the side of the ether. This cannot be physical. Infinity is sort of moving towards the non-physical. It can't be physical. You see, but of course the concept of infinity exists. So as the universe moves towards infinity, it's essentially moving back towards the ether. You see, the physical world and the physical world here on this side, the physical world and the non-physical world, they're stretching away and moving together. These two things are always moving away and together. So inertia creates this. From inertia, we create this force, this electromagnetism. And this happens, we have to divide inertia. Inertia, we have to divide it. So you divide inertia into a potential. So inertia is an infinite potential, but we divide it. So here's inertia and we divide it. And when we divide inertia, we have like a potential created. Again, there's not really a plus and a minus, but I'll come to that. But you see that as soon as we split the ether, we create a divergence of inertia. Now we've got something happening between these two sides. We've got a voltage difference. So now we've got a bit of energy. This is now a bit of energy. But what this inertia wants to do, it always wants to spring back. Everything wants to go back to inertia. So this is like an elastic band. I stretch out an elastic band, and if I let go of the elastic band, it will spring back. So the elastic band here is at rest in inertia. I give it some energy. I pull the elastic band apart, and then if I let go, that energy wants to return back to inertia. There's two things going on here. There's the creation of energy. Inertia is being divided to create some energy, and now this is a limited potential. Okay, it's limited now. So this is physical reality, but it wants to spring back. It always wants to go back to inertia, where it becomes unlimited again. In the middle, it becomes unlimited. So if I hold the elastic band out, let go, it will spring back. And another way I can say it is here with gravity. Okay, let's just use this as a metaphor. At the moment, this pen is at rest. It's in inertia. Now, if I were to lift this pen up, I have now divided inertia. I have given this pen a certain amount of energy. If I let go, it falls down again. So now it wants to go back to inertia. So here I have created energy. If I let go, that energy goes back down to inertia. Now the problem is, most of the technology we've got now is based on this part of it. Everything wants to go back to inertia. And if I can do this, there are machines like this, so you can lift up a big heavy rock and you have a wire tied to the rock, and so if the rock falls down slowly, it'll move up this bit of the wire, and this bit of wire might turn a wheel and turn an engine. So this is called a potential energy machine. So you can use the fact that the pen wants to fall down again to create a machine. So that is the science we've got now. We're using energy that is already in existence, and that energy wants to go back to inertia, and as it goes back to inertia, we use that we capture that energy and make a machine out of it. It's the same like a fire burning. A fire burns, and again what's happening is the wood is all burning, and the wood is sort of returning back to dust. It's a process of burning where a chemical process in which the energy in the wood is returning back to inertia. It's going to a lower energy state. And in the process of going back to a lower energy state, we're capturing the energy of the fire off it. So this is our technology is based on fire, it's based on explosions, it's based on things that are manifest going back to inertia, returning back to inertia. Now Tesla's science is the other way around. If we can capture the energy coming out of the ether, we can capture this side when the energy is being released, when we are separating inertia. Well, now we've got infinite energy here. How do we get this part? See, mostly we're only using this part. This part is finite energy. We've only got so much wood to burn before it runs out. This is infinite. How do we get the energy out of the ether? And again, this is chi. How do we get the chi into our body? How do we access the infinite potential, this infinite inertia? And this, we can, when we capture the chi outside ourselves, well, this is sort of finite. We're capturing the chi as it's moving back to inertia. We want to create the energy, and we are creating the energy. See, let's take this a little bit further, this analogy. See, I'm lifting this up. I'm actually creating energy. I have created this energy. Now, modern science would say, well, no. I have supplied my energy to lift the pen up. And then my energy that I've given the pen is gone down. So no energy is created. Well, okay, by that logic, you have to calculate the calories. How many calories do I burn to lift this pen up? And the amount of calories that I burn in lifting this pen must be exactly equal to the potential energy. Well, you can calculate this quite easily, how much energy this pen will have when it falls down. But it won't be equal. See, remember, it's not this. Lifting my hand up uses a certain amount of calories, but that's not good enough. I've got to calculate the difference between this and the difference between this. So lifting this pen up, or doing the movement without lifting the pen up, what is the difference in the calories I burn to lift this pen up? And once you know what that is, it's going to be minuscule, tiny amount of difference between that and that. This pen doesn't weigh much. But that makes quite a loud sound. That's quite a lot of energy that happens when it falls. So I put it to you that the calories I burn to do that are insignificant, and there's a lot more energy comes out of it when it falls down. By modern science, that equation should be equal. The calories I burn in lifting up the pen must equal the amount of energy it gets when it returns back to inertia, but it won't be. You see, but what am I actually doing? I am using my energy to change the situation. I am changing the situation of this pen. And by changing the situation of this pen, I have changed its energy. I'm transferring energy to it. I've changed its situation. And it's the same with Tesla's physics. You see, Tesla's physics is about the ether. He believed he was drawing energy out of the ether. He was collecting electricity out of the ether directly. And we can look at this as a dynamo. You see, if you take a coil of wire, or it was a simple thing, right? It's not quite a dynamo. And you have a magnet, and there's a magnet, and you put the magnet through the coil of wire. Okay, I'm saying positive and negative, but actually, again, there is no positive and negative charge. If you go back to the elastic band, you see a potential is created, and you wouldn't say, well, this end of the elastic band is positive charge, this end of the elastic band is negative charge. You wouldn't say that, because the middle is where there's zero charge, and at the end there's charge. So there's really two things. There is charge, and there is discharge. So really, these are the two things. It's not positive and negative. There's only one thing. There's one potentiality. It's called charge and discharge. And two magnets pull towards each other, but it's not the magnets pulling towards each other. It's like the elastic band. They're pulling towards the midpoint, the point where there is minimum pressure. They're pulling to the midpoint. Like the elastic band, this side is not pulling to this side. It is, but they're both really going to the middle. They're both just going to the middle where there's no energy, where there's the point of inertia. Anyway, point being is, you take a coil of wire and you take a magnet and you move this magnet back and forth in the wire. Then what you get is you get a current of energy. You get electricity coming out the end. Okay, so this movement of the magnet in and out of the wire creates a current. So again, now modern science will say, well, and you can do it the other way around, spin the wire, spin the current round and round, or magnet. You can do this in all different ways. But look, this is the simplest way of doing it. So you'd think this movement, if I'm pumping the magnet through the wire, I'm using kinetic energy to create this electricity. But now you're not. You're actually setting up a situation. You're setting up you are setting up a geometry that is causing electricity to come out of the ether. It is being manifested. And the way we can prove that is, say you take this wire and you just cut it. You just put, okay, let's put a plastic strip there in the middle of the wire, so you've broken the connection. And you then start pumping this thing through here. And it will take a certain amount of energy to pump this through. But no electricity will come out. And then if you take that away, you open it, so now this is coiling, you pump this thing, you do exactly the same amount of work. No change in the work, then the electricity comes out. You see, again, by the logic of what modern science is saying, law of thermodynamics, the kinetic energy of me pumping this should equal exactly the electrical energy coming out. But it doesn't. It's not directly connected. It's indirectly connected. There's not a transform. We're not changing. We're not transforming one energy into another energy. We're setting up a situation that causes the ether to manifest itself. Now, as soon as you can understand that, you realize free energy is very real. Free energy is very, very real. And it's based on this Tesla science. It's based on the science of ether. Ether is unmanifest potential, and you've got to find a way of getting that unmanifest potential out. And again, quantum mechanics calls this the 0 point field. It's another euphemism. The 0 point field. They talk about 0 point energy. That's just the ether. Okay, they just made it very convoluted, very complex, and hopefully one day they'll see this and come all the way back to Tesla science and just start looking at the ether and trying to work out how can we manifest electricity out of the ether. And there's several different ways to do that. So you see Tesla created the AC generator. Him and other field theories people, lots of them. And they used to joke about it when they went and worked on this generator. They'd say, look, another day, hard work, churning out the ether. They believe they're literally churning out energy from the ether. They were manifesting it out of the ether. They're not transforming it. And now you can create a free energy machine. All you need is a wheel. You just need a wheel that turns round and round and round. And that wheel is a coil, and you've got a magnet. And you can make this wheel turn around with little magnets. So little magnets at an angle going around the wheel, and then you have a few magnets around the wheel, and what happens is you just start the wheel spinning, and each time the magnets just keep pulling, and you'll get this sort of perpetual motion. And because all you need is a motion. You don't need any energy in the motion. It's just got to go round and round. It's geometry required, geometry and movement. In other words, you need geometry and time or movement. These two things. This will allow you to manifest energy out of the ether. And that's what the AC generator is. That's what a dynamo is. But there are other ways of doing this. It tells you geometry will also do something. So what are the geometries we need? This is the sort of science we ought to be thinking about. This is magical science. That's why you've got all these magical symbols, all these things like the pyramids. This is geometry. These ancient technologies, they're using geometry. Geometry itself is going to stimulate the ether, because geometry is mathematics. Mathematics is in the ether. And if you can create a mathematics in such a way, and again, the pyramid is not really 4 sides, you might not know this, but the pyramid is actually 8 sides. Very complex geometry. The measurements of this, the alignment of north-south, it's got perfect alignment. The measurements in here, you can calculate the diameter of the earth, the speed of light, the distance of the earth of the sun, the diameter of the sun. There's so many mathematical numbers in the pyramids. The ratio of the pyramid volume to the ratio of the earth, volume rather. So there's so many mathematical connections in the pyramid to physical reality that this is why this is built by a very, very advanced technology. I don't care what anyone says now, and most people know it's got to be advanced. The sheer mathematics in that is so phenomenal. We could not build this today. There's just no way we could build this today. Forget about the fact that how big it is. And they're bigger ones. You go to Antarctica, there's big ones, 2 kilometers length. So huge pyramids all over the place. So a lot was going on. But what is going on here? This is a machine to draw energy out of the ether. They knew about the ether, the force. Everything was to do with the force. And just by building something in a particular geometry will also stimulate the ether to manifest itself. So somewhere in here you're going to generate energy. And they had a capstone. And at the capstone you had wireless power. And the wireless power goes to these obelisks. So again, this transmits the power to a smaller substation, and the substation would transmit the power to people. And they had some instruments. You know, they might have had some electrical instruments that could do some things. But this is just simply Tesla's wireless power transfer, and this happens through resonance. And again, resonance is something that modern science cannot explain. They've got so many things they can't explain, so many problems. Instantaneous action at a distance, they can't explain that. The same as resonance. How does one thing resonate with another? You ask them about magnetic induction in a vacuum. How do you create this magnetic induction in a vacuum? There's no transfer of energy between these two things. How is one thing affecting the other? It's affecting it through resonance, but resonance is geometry. Geometry connects to mathematics, and all geometry is linked together with mathematics, and mathematics is the ether. The ether itself is mathematics. It's information, it's consciousness. It is mathematics itself. It's hard to wrap your head around this. Information and mathematics and consciousness, these are non-physical things. This is the underlying field of the ether. This is the thing that manifests. So when we use mathematics in a particular way, it can stimulate the production of energy. All we want to do is get this ability to create free energy. Energy comes out of the ether due to this geometry and due to resonance. Okay, there's a lot more to this as well. But it means what's happening. And again, this happens with Qigong. It happens in our body. We use our body to create a particular shape. We create a shape with our body. And this shape is a geometry. And this geometry helps us to collect and generate ether, create ether inside ourselves. And we know that consciousness is ether, awareness is ether, and it just so happens we are conscious, so we are made up of chi. All we have to do is decide to create that energy. You see, let's go back again to this pen. I told you that this pen, I'm creating energy when I do this. This pen is at inertia. It has infinite potential now. This pen could do anything. It could be shot out of a cannon. I could blow it up. It has infinite potential. Anything could happen to this pen. I don't know what it is, but it's infinite. So I'm going to narrow it down. I'm going to do something with it. Now I've given it a potential. I've lifted it up. I've given it some energy. But I've limited it. I've given it a limited potential. I've locked it into reality now. So the only thing this pen can do is go back. It wants to go back. It has to fall back down. So how did this pen get up? Well, I had to make a decision. You see, I'm a living conscious being. I am consciousness. So consciousness has got to decide to do something. So consciousness decides to give this pen some energy. I've made a decision to do that. But a decision is not quite enough. It's not that I made a decision. I need to have a bit more. I actually have a desire. So I have a desire to lift this pen up. Only if I've got a strong enough desire would I bother to lift it up. And of course my real desire is to explain this to you. So my real conscious motivation for giving this pen some energy is desire. I desire to lift this pen up. So now we're getting into metaphysics, because let's define energy. Energy as we know it, as we see in this universe, electromagnetism, and again, this pen is falling due to electromagnetism. It's not gravity. Gravity is still just an effect of electromagnetism. And if you want to learn more, I'll talk about it in time, but you can think of gravity as incoherent magnetism. Two magnets are coherent magnetism. When you have incoherent, it's not so focused, then you have gravity. And Ken Wheeler explains this very, very well, but let's just look metaphorically. So here is pure potential. Now I've given it some energy. So this energy I'm saying is the division of inertia. So now I'm defining energy for you. Okay, I've defined inertia. Inertia is chi, pure potentiality, infinite potential. So now energy we define as the division of inertia. So by doing this, I've divided inertia. I've created a division, a potential. And then that drops down, that division returns. It has now become unified again. So energy is the division of inertia, or the creation of energy. And then I'm going to say one other thing. So this is the energy. And then we'll have another one, entropy. So entropy is the return to inertia. So here, energy I am creating. And then energy as it goes back down, I'm calling inertia. But most of the technology we've got is inertial energy. It's entropic energy. It's the process of energy disappearing back again. This is explosive technology. It's primitive technology. See, the pen has got some energy. I know it's going to fall down, and I study the way it falls down. And as it falls down, I realise, oh, I could capture some of that, and I capture the energy as the pen falls down. But I think it's limited. Oh, it's ended now. It's finished. I don't realise there's a process of lifting the pen up, and this is infinite. So I can always keep lifting the pen up. Again, don't take that metaphor too far because I'm only here for a period of time. But in the theory, of course, consciousness can keep lifting the pen up. Only something conscious can make a decision to lift this pen up to give it some energy. So consciousness creates energy. It has to make a decision to create that energy. So consciousness creates energy. And energy is the division of inertia. So consciousness creates energy. Energy is the division of inertia. Well, let's call this inertia divided by 2. It's not real mathematics. Energy is the division of inertia. And then inertia, then that energy goes back to entropy. So let's call that entropy. Then entropy goes back to inertia, which is back to consciousness. So there's a cycle going on here. And we want to do is get that side of the cycle. We want to learn how do we get consciousness into energy. And this is the side we're using here. Energy going back to consciousness, going back to inertia, disappearing again. And you look at this in lightning. You see, we look at lightning. Lightning is very powerful, but what's happening? Where does it go? We say, well, lightning goes to ground. Yeah, but ground, what's ground? Where is ground? Yeah, it's in the earth. Well, it's not in the earth. You could see lightning. Lightning tends to strike the earth like this. So we think, yeah, it goes to ground. But sometimes you get lightning, it doesn't all go to the ground, it goes off like this. So it's going to other places. It's not just here. And then sometimes you get lightning that comes up from the earth and meets it. So it's not going to the earth, it's going to these little points. And these are points of low pressure where these are points of inertia. You know, as the energy is disappearing back into the ether through these points. And Eric Dollard is another expert scientist who talks about Tesla's physics. He calls this counterspace. And this is a big problem with power lines. Energy disappears. Where does it go? Well, it goes back to what he calls counterspace. It's disappearing back to inertia. Energy is being created and destroyed, disappearing again. Because energy and consciousness are the same thing. They're the same thing. This is just how it's working. So in our body, we need to realize that the chi comes from consciousness. I've got to focus my consciousness into my body and realize that my body is one of these elaborate machines. It is a particular geometry. A body is a particular geometry. A geometry that will collect the ether. The ether can come and create. Well, not only it collects it, what it means, it stimulates the ether coming out into physical reality. And the body is also a method for the consciousness to experience this shared reality. So the body again is going to be governed by mathematics, and the growth of the body is governed by the golden ratio. Everything is in the golden ratio. You can look at all the body, all the distances between the eyes, the length of the nose. You see the distance between the arms, each finger joint. All these distances, all these lengths and distances in the body go together with the golden ratio. Everything is governed by mathematics. And mathematics, this mathematics of the golden ratio, there is only one solution in which we can create a shared reality, and that's the one we've got. And that gives us this humanoid body. So again, we can have all ideas about fantasy aliens and everything like that, but there is only one solution for a living conscious being. This is the solution, a humanoid body. It's the most efficient optimum geometry for a conscious being in this material world. So all life forms, all intelligent life forms, that is, self-aware life forms, are going to have some sort of a humanoid form. It's going to be some sort of humanoid form. It has to. It has to. Even we've got intelligent animals like whales in the ocean. The whales, very, very intelligent. but they still don't have the same level of intelligence as a human, because we are creative. At a certain level of intelligence, a certain level of consciousness, you could look at us as a singularity of chi. We are a singularity of chi. At a certain amount of chi, we have a certain amount of self-awareness. We need to be able to create. I need to be able to lift this pen up. I am creating energy by doing this. See, a whale has got no hands, so it can't create. And if you're a very high level conscious being and you can't create, you'll go mad. So they can't be too conscious, otherwise they'll go mad. We have to be able to create. We've got to be able to do things to satisfy our consciousness. That is the universe. We are the universe. We are the ether. We are the conscious chi that is making the universe appear. How many times I've got it? Look, when this elastic band gets energy, I am creating it. I, consciousness, am manifesting energy by stretching this elastic band. And when I let go, in other words, I have a desire. A desire creates this. So desire is really the creation of, is the forerunner of energy. So energy is created by desire. Now we're getting into metaphysics. You see, this is feeling. This is consciousness. So the universe is created by desire. But desire is not enough, because you need mathematics. Like I said, without mathematics, there's only one mathematical solution that can create a combined reality. So no matter how many I may have desires for imagination, imagine desires, and I don't get them because there's no mathematical solution to get them. So again, there's a lot of manifestation madness now. Who wants to get rich by manifesting? This is manifestation theory, but you've got to follow the mathematical process. You're still going to have to follow this process to manifest your £1 million. We want to manifest 1 million. Well, just imagining it won't work. You've got to imagine it, but you have to imagine it through a process that might make it work. You have to go through the right process. So desire creates energy, and energy creates the material universe. So the universe appears because we wanted it to. We want it to. And it happens on a very small scale. We've got a big scale now, but on a small scale it happens. The ether has a desire, and it begins to vibrate. It vibrates. And as it vibrates, this turns into electromagnetism. Electromagnetism is this movement. It's a force. It's a force because you've divided the potential just to something. You've got to create a little bit of a space, but then it wants to go back again. And then this pulse is a vibration. And at a certain, again, I mentioned in the last lecture, at a certain vibration, a certain frequency, it will create a standing wave, a sphere, and this creates a particle. And this particle we call the neutron. But because there is only one ether, there's only one ether. Oops. There's only one ether, there's only one wave, and there's only one wave, one vibration in the ether, and there's only one field, because there's only one way of dividing this inertia. You see, and a field is interesting. A field is, even this electromagnetic field is not physical sort of thing. It's an infinite thing. The moment you create a field, the field is infinite. So if you're going to create a vibration like this, coming out, like it's like ripples in a pond. But in theory, a magnetic field goes on to infinity. If this was a magnet, even if it's a weak magnet, I can sense the field here, but the magnetic field goes on forever. So the moment you've got a field, you've already got infinite space. But it's due to the field. There's not a thing, space all by itself, it's because there is a field. So this division of inertia creates a space, and this space wants to go back to inertia. This creates a vibration. But there's only one field, only one wave, so there's only one particle. There's only one standing wave solution. And this wave happens in this particular rhythm because, again, of the golden ratio. There's a ratio, there's a lag between the electric, or there's the dielectric, and the magnetic. There's two aspects to this. There's an aspect of bursting out, and there's an aspect of pulling back in again. And this again comes with these two shapes. There's an aspect of bursting out through this dielectric paraboloid, but this one also wants to come back in again. You see, it goes out and it wants to come back in again. This is how we draw magnetic field lines. It's like going out and coming back in again. Inertia from this midpoint of 0, here's nothing. There's no space and time here. From this point, inertia bursts out. It creates this magnetic field, but it wants to go back in. Where does it go? Well, it goes all the way off to infinity. And that effectively means it's come back again. So the moment you've got any little thing happening, there you've got infinite space. But this is one and the same thing. This force of bursting out and coming back in, this is the force, but we call it a magnetic field. It's got an effect. So anywhere something else could be affected by this. Either it can be pushed away or dragged in. And this is what we call positive and negative, but it's not really positive and negative. It's the stretching and the returning of inertia. So desire, the desire of the ether creates a vibration. And at a certain frequency, this gets faster and faster and faster and faster. It creates a particle, which is a neutron. And in the next lecture, I'm going to be talking more about this, how this creates the universe, how this creates the physical reality, and how consciousness now interacts with this. Because consciousness here creates a wave. This is still sort of fluid, but from the wave now we've got something else. So now this is self-sustaining. So this bounces back to consciousness. So now we've got a third-party world. This is a third-party existence. This is made up of the ether, but it's sort of outside the ether. And what's interesting is this particle now is free particle floating off. We've got the universe, but this particle is also trapped. The ether is trapped in this self-sustaining wave. This particle still wants to go back to ether. It still wants to destroy itself. It wants to return to ether, but it's stuck now. Physical matter is ether that has crystallized. It's got stuck. But all physical matter wants to return back to ether. You can also look at gravities, and it wants to come back together. It wants to come back together. And the only way it can go back to ether if it gets smashed. So we smash this up, we disturb it, we break the wave, and then the wave becomes a freestanding wave again, and it can flow off into infinity and go back to ether. So matter again is crystallized ether. It's not in the creation process. It's now on the entropic process. It's trying to return back to ether, but it can't. It's trapped. It's crystallized, and a crystal is the most stable form of matter. And matter is, so the atoms are locked there. They can't go back to inertia. It's a very interesting thing we've got to talk about. So that's the next lecture. But I hope this made sense. I hope you've got the feeling that this is to do with consciousness. We are conscious, living beings of mathematics and information, and there's a blueprint, and there's only one blueprint for life, which is what we got. Well, I tell a lie. Of course, we've got so many different forms of these life forms, but they're all going to be governed by this basic mathematics, the golden ratio. And all life forms are based on the same nucleotides, the same elements that make up the DNA. You need all these structures in place. And it's all basically the same. Just like us, we're all different. Everyone's face is different, but we've all got 2 eyes, a nose and a mouth. It's the same. Humanoid structure, the humanoid body form is going to be the optimum structure for a conscious being, a self-aware being. And that's what we are, self-aware beings. We are the ones creating the universe. The universe is created by us. The atoms coming into existence are created by us. The energy coming into existence is created by us. When Tesla built his AC generator, he was a conscious being, and he created that. He created a geometric structure in this material reality using the mathematics that allows this to happen, and he created a structure that continually draws draws electricity out of the ether. So it could only happen because he was a living being, and he made it happen. Again, hard to wrap your head around, but this is intuitive logic, intuitive science. We are the conscious beings. We are chi, we are ether, and that ether operates through this body. But this body is still made up of ether. It's atoms, which are essentially crystallized ether, wanting to return back to inertia. But as a being like this, we can know this science and use it to go inwards. And I would say here, this is the center part of your body, the heart. This is a very, very important part. This is really where the chi is created. Your feelings, your soul power is here. Feel it and believe it. This is the secret to generating chi. And there's a technology which is very, very important, which I'm talking about, but the technology is in our body. We need this in our body. We've got to feel it and experience it. Okay, so I hope this lecture made sense. Please do leave any questions and I might be able to qualify them in the comments below. But we're carrying on with this lecture series. I've got quite a few to get through. And as we go through them, I hope this will become clearer and clearer. And again, it's my own thoughts. I'm humbly trying to express a new way of looking at the world. I do get very excited by it, so forgive me if I come across a bit evangelical, but I'm just excited. I am attempting to be humble, but I'm excited by this, and I'm disappointed with what we've got. Because if only we had Tesla's science, if only they were looking into this stuff, we would be living in a different world. But people are, and it won't take long. If we choose to go down this way, we can build a better world quite quickly. All right, check out one of these other videos here, and I look forward to seeing you next time.